I'm standing outside the maternity ward when my son-in-law Brad blocks my path. She didn't make it, Van. Complications during delivery. His parents are behind him, and I swear I see his mother smile. My daughter Sarah, my only child, gone. But the baby's cries echo from somewhere down the hall. They won't let me see her body. Family only, Brad's father says. I'm her father. Something's wrong here. I nod, turn away like a broken old man. But I'm coming back. 3 hours earlier, I had been sitting in my kitchen, nursing my morning coffee, and going through old photos of Sarah. The call came at 7:43. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at the clock wondering if it was too early to call and check on her. She was 2 days past her due date, and my father's intuition was working overtime. Van, it's Brad. His voice crackled through the phone and immediately something felt off. Brad usually called me Pops, in that easygoing way of his. Sarah's water broke. We're heading to the hospital now. Which hospital? I asked, already grabbing my keys. Grandview Medical, the private wing. My parents are already there. That was the first thing that struck me as odd. We'd toured Jefferson Memorial together just last month, where Sarah's obstetrician had privileges. Grandview was clear across the city, and Sarah had never mentioned switching. I thought Dr. Peterson was delivering at Jefferson. Change of plans. My parents arranged for better care here. Top specialists. The drive to Grandview took 45 minutes through morning traffic. I'd called Sarah's cell twice, but Brad answered both times, claiming she was being prepped. My gut churned with each mile, that same feeling I used to get during my forensic accounting days, when numbers didn't add up. Grandview Medical's private wing looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. Marble floors, chandeliers, and soft classical music. Brad's parents, Gerald and Martha Blackwood, stood near the elevator like sentries. Gerald, silver-haired, and wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars, extended his hand with all the warmth of a glacier. Van, good of you to come. Martha, draped in designer clothing and diamonds, barely glanced my way. She was busy signing papers at the nurse's station, her manicured fingers moving swiftly across documents I couldn't see from where I stood. Where's Sarah? I asked Brad, who seemed to shrink under his father's gaze. She's in delivery suite 4. The doctors are with her now. They said family should wait out here. I'm her father. Gerald stepped between me and the doors leading to the delivery area. Of course you are, but the medical team needs space to work. You understand. We've hired the best. Dr. Rothsberg trained in Switzerland. I'd never heard Sarah mention any Dr. Rothsberg. My unease deepened when a young nurse with kind eyes tried to approach me. Her name tag read Amy. She opened her mouth to speak, but Martha materialized beside her, like a hawk swooping on prey. Amy, don't you have other patients to attend to? Martha's tone could have frozen fire. Amy glanced at me, something urgent in her expression, before hurrying away. Brad stood by the window, absorbed in his phone. I noticed his hands trembling slightly as he typed. When he caught me looking, he shoved the device in his pocket and attempted a weak smile. Just updating the family group chat. Everyone's excited about the baby. For the next hour, I paced that waiting room like a caged animal. Every time I asked for updates, Gerald intercepted the medical staff before they could reach me. He and Martha spoke in hushed tones with doctors I didn't recognize, always just out of earshot. Their body language screamed control and coordination, like actors who'd rehearsed their roles. The turning point came when I overheard Gerald on his phone. He'd stepped into an alcove, probably thinking he was out of range, but 30 years of investigating financial crimes had taught me how to position myself strategically. Everything's proceeding as discussed, he said quietly. Yes, the paperwork is being handled. We'll have full custody within the week. Full custody of my grandchild. While Sarah was still in labor. I pretended to doze in a chair, watching through barely open eyes as Martha pulled something from her purse to show a nurse. The overhead light caught its surface, and my blood turned to ice. It was Sarah's wedding ring. The Celtic knot design. I'd helped her pick out, the one she never removed, not even for ultrasounds. Before I could process this, Brad appeared with the news that would shatter my world. Or, so they wanted me to believe. His performance was almost convincing, the rehearsed grief, the calculated blocking of my path to Sarah. But behind him, Martha's lips curved in a satisfied smile she didn't quite hide fast enough. They thought they had me fooled. They thought I was just a grieving old man who'd slink away with his tail between his legs. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I'd spent 3 decades uncovering financial crimes, following paper trails that led to the darkest corners of human greed. I'd learned that the biggest criminals were often the ones in expensive suits with perfect smiles. As I walked toward the elevator, shoulders slumped in manufactured defeat, my mind was already working. Sarah's voice echoed in my memory from just last week. "Dad, I'm scared. Not of giving birth, but Brad's been acting strange. His parents keep talking about the baby like Sarah's already theirs." I'd dismissed it as pregnancy hormones then. Now, standing in that elevator, I made a silent promise to my daughter. If they were lying, if this was what my instincts screamed it was, I'd burn their entire world to the ground. But first, I had to play their game. Let them think they'd won. The elevator doors closed on their satisfied faces. They had no idea the war had just begun. The hospital parking lot stretched before me like an ocean of concrete and steel. I sat in my car for exactly 3 minutes, letting them think I was leaving. Then I circled back, parking in the emergency room section, where my old Lincoln would blend in with the chaos of ambulances and worried families. My hands moved with practiced efficiency, pulling up the recording app my FBI friend Marcus had insisted I install years ago. "You never know when you'll need evidence, Van," he'd said. Prophet's words now. I slipped the phone into my breast pocket, testing to make sure the microphone wasn't blocked. The service entrance was exactly where Hospital Blueprints Online said it would be. Funny how much information was publicly available when you knew where to look. My forensic accounting background hadn't just taught me about numbers. It taught me about systems patterns and how institutions tried to hide their secrets. I moved through the back corridors like I belonged there, shoulders, straight pace, steady. Confidence was the best disguise. 2 maintenance workers passed without a second glance. A food service employee nodded politely. Just another visitor who'd gotten turned around in the maze of hallways. That's when I spotted her. Amy, the young nurse from earlier, stood outside a supply closet, wiping her eyes with a tissue. Her shoulders shook with suppressed sobs. I approached carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Amy." She spun around, fear flashing across her face before recognition set in. "Mr. Van, you shouldn't be back here. If Mrs. Blackwood sees you." "Why are you crying?" The question broke through whatever professional wall she'd been maintaining. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Your daughter. She was asking for you. Begging for you. They wouldn't let me call. Said it would upset her too much, but she kept saying, 'I need my dad. Please get my dad.'" My knees nearly buckled, but I forced myself to stay upright. "When was this?" "Maybe an hour ago, right before they took her for the emergency section." Amy glanced around nervously. "I've been a nurse for 5 years. I've never seen anything like—" "Your daughter was fine. Perfect vitals, baby was in position." Then the Blackwoods visited her room privately, and suddenly she was coding. Coding! Her heart rate crashed. They rushed her to surgery. But Mr. Van, I checked her monitors myself minutes before. Everything was normal. It doesn't make medical sense. I pulled out my wallet, extracting a business card with just my cell number. "Text me anything unusual. Anything at all. Can you do that?" She took the card with shaking fingers. "I could lose my job. And my daughter could have lost her life. Please." Amy nodded, tucking the card into her scrub pocket. "There's something else. Dr. Rothsberg. He's not an obstetrician. He's a transplant surgeon." The blood in my veins turned to ice water, but I kept my expression neutral. I thanked Amy and made my way back to my car, mind racing with implications too horrible to fully process. Back home, my house felt like a tomb. Sarah's childhood pictures smiled at me from every wall, her laughter echoing in memories that threatened to break my composure. But grief would have to wait. If my suspicions were right, she needed her father, the investigator, now, not the mourner. I set up in my home office, the room where I'd unraveled corporate fraud schemes that had made headlines. The computer hummed to life, and I began my dive into the Blackwood family. Every financial database, I still had access to every public record, every social media trace. What I found made my stomach churn. Gerald Blackwood didn't just have money. He had the kind of wealth that bought silence and looked the other way. His holdings included numerous medical facilities, all operating under different shell companies. One name kept appearing in the incorporation documents: Renewal Health Systems. The same company owned the entire east wing of Grandview Medical. But it was Sarah's insurance information that made my hands shake. Her life insurance policy, which we'd set up together at a reasonable $100,000, had been increased to $3 million just 4 weeks ago. The beneficiary had been changed from me to the Blackwood Family Trust with Brad as the trustee. I dug deeper. Brad's digital footprint painted a picture of a man drowning. Gambling sites, cryptocurrency losses, loan shark connections barely disguised as investment firms. His debt totaled nearly $2 million. 2 million reasons to trade his wife's life for financial freedom. My phone buzzed. Amy had sent a text: "Strange shipment, just left for Renewal Health Systems facility on Riverside. Marked as medical equipment, but the transport team mentioned special patient prep. Thought you should know." I pulled up everything I could find on the Riverside facility. On paper, it was a long-term care facility for patients in persistent vegetative states. The kind of place where families parked loved ones who would never wake up. But the financial records told a different story. Massive medical supply orders that didn't match their stated patient capacity. International wire transfers to countries with loose medical regulations. Transport logs showing regular flights to South America and Eastern Europe. My secure email chimed. Sarah's account was still synced to our family cloud from when I'd helped her set up her new laptop. My fingers trembled as I opened her inbox. Most emails were routine, baby preparation work matters, friend conversations. But one sent just 3 days ago made my vision blur with rage. From Martha, blackwood@prestigemed.com, to brad.blackwood@gmail.com. Subject: re-timeline. Don't worry, honey, dad will never know what hit him after you're gone. The baby will be ours, and that doddering old fool will be too grief-stricken to fight for custody. We've handled 2 already. 3rd time's always the charm. Just remember your lines when the time comes. Love, Mom. I read it 3 times, each word burning into my brain. We've handled 2 already. 2 other women. 2 other families destroyed. And they called me a doddering old fool. My hands were steady now, the trembling replaced by cold purpose. They'd made a critical error. They'd assumed that age meant weakness, that retirement meant irrelevance. They had no idea that some old wolves just got better at hunting. I began building my file with methodical precision. Screenshots, financial records, corporate structures, email evidence, every piece dated and verified. The picture emerging was monstrous. The Blackwoods weren't just murderers. They were running an organ trafficking ring, disguised as elder care, using their hospital connections to harvest from victims they'd declared dead. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Van, this is Dr. Patricia Chen from Jefferson Memorial. I'm calling because I'm concerned. Sarah missed her appointment today, and she hasn't answered our calls. She was so excited about delivering here, and with her being so close to term. They told me she died in childbirth at Grandview, I said flatly. The silence on the other end stretched so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. Then, that's impossible. I saw Sarah 2 days ago. She was in perfect health. Why would she even be at Grandview? She's not their patient. That's what I'm trying to figure out, doctor. Mr. Van, I need to tell you something. About 6 months ago, we had 2 patients transfer suddenly to Grandview. Both young mothers, both in perfect health. Both allegedly died in childbirth there. Their families, they just accepted it. But I always wondered. What were their names? I shouldn't. But if Sarah's really Jennifer Walsh and Maria Santos? I wrote down the names with a steady hand. 2 more pieces of the puzzle. 2 more families to find stories to uncover. The Blackwoods had built their fortune on stolen lives and harvested hope. They'd picked the wrong family this time. As night fell, I sat in darkness, planning my next moves. Somewhere in this city, they were probably toasting their success, counting their blood money, and cooing over my grandchild, while believing my daughter was gone. Let them celebrate. Let them think they'd won. Because tomorrow, I was going to war. And 30 years of following money trails through the darkest corners of human greed had taught me one thing. The bigger they thought they were, the harder they fell. The Blackwoods were about to learn what happened when you mistook an old wolf's gray fur for weakness. I pulled up Amy's number and typed carefully, "Keep watching. Document everything. Justice is coming." Then I opened a new file on my computer and typed 2 words, Operation Sarah. The hunt had begun. The next morning arrived draped in gray clouds that matched my manufactured mood. I stood before my bathroom mirror practicing the slump of defeated shoulders, the hollow stare of a broken man. Method, acting for survival. Sarah had always teased me about my poker face during family game nights. "Dad, you're terrible at bluffing," she'd laugh. If only she could see me now. The funeral home Gerald had selected reeked of calculated opulence. Mahogany, everything crystal chandeliers, and prices that would make most families take out second mortgages. The director, Mr. Pemberton, greeted me with practiced sympathy that probably cost extra. "Mr. Van, the Blackwood family has made all the arrangements. You need not worry about anything." "I'd like to see my daughter," I said, letting my voice crack strategically. Pemberton's face shifted minutely, a tell any investigator would catch. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. The family has requested a closed casket service, given the circumstances of her passing." Circumstances? The trauma from the emergency surgery. It's better to remember her as she was. I let my shoulders shake, covering my face as I stumbled toward a chair. While Pemberton rushed to fetch water, I palmed my phone and snapped photos of the documents on his desk. Cremation authorization already signed. Death certificate predated. Transport papers showing no body delivery scheduled. "Here, sir, please drink this." Pemberton hovered anxiously. I sipped the water, then asked in a broken voice, When will she arrive?" Another micro-expression of discomfort. "The hospital is handling the transport directly to the crematorium. It's more efficient this way." Efficient. They weren't even trying to hide their haste to destroy evidence. The wake was scheduled for that evening, at Gerald's estate, a sprawling compound that looked like it had been airlifted from a European monarchy. I arrived in my oldest suit, purposely wrinkled, playing the part of a man who couldn't even dress himself properly through grief. Martha greeted guests at the door designer black dress, and pearls the size of grapes. "Van," she said, her sympathy as fake as her eyelashes. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know how to go on without her," I mumbled, letting tears pool in my eyes. "Well, you won't be alone. We're family now. The baby needs stability, especially after such trauma." The house buzzed with Blackwood associates, all cut from the same cloth of entitled wealth. I drifted through rooms like a ghost, listening to conversations while appearing lost in grief. "Poor thing never stood a chance," one woman whispered to another. "Martha says she had a weak constitution. Probably hereditary from the father's side. At least the baby survived. Martha will raise it properly. She's already converted the East Wing into a nursery." My fists clenched in my pockets, but I maintained my broken facade. In the study, I found Brad holding court with his college friends, already 3 drinks in. "It's been rough," he was saying, not a tear in sight. "But Dad says I need to be strong. Move forward. Focus on the future." One friend clapped his shoulder. "At least your debts are cleared now, right? That insurance money must be a relief." Brad's face flushed. "Shut up, Derek." I shuffled past as if I hadn't heard, but filed away Derek's name and face. Loose lips and alcohol might prove useful later. In the kitchen, Martha cornered me with legal documents. Van, I know this is difficult, but we need to discuss the baby's future. Brad is devastated, as you can imagine. He's in no state to raise a child alone. What are you suggesting? Gerald and I would like to formally adopt the baby. It's what's best for everyone. You're not getting younger, and a child needs energy resources stability. I stared at the papers with unfocused eyes. I don't know. Sarah would want what's best for her child. Martha interrupted Steele beneath the silk. And let's be honest, Van. You're barely holding yourself together. How could you manage an infant? Maybe you're right, I whispered. I can barely remember to eat. This morning I forgot how to tie my shoes. Martha's smile turned predatory. Exactly. We'll take care of everything. Just sign here and you can grieve in peace. Can I think about it just a few days? Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. Of course, but don't wait too long. The baby needs stability now, not later. I wandered onto the terrace where Gerald held court with business associates. They didn't notice the broken old man leaning against the railing, and their voices carried clearly in the evening air. Third time's the charm, Gerald was saying. The facility is operating at peak efficiency now. Transport to Brazil leaves Thursday. And the quality? Another man asked. Premium. Young, healthy organs fetch top dollar. The Saudis alone will pay 8 figures for a compatible heart. My stomach heaved, and I didn't have to fake stumbling to the bathroom. As I passed the coat closet, a hand caught my arm. The funeral director's assistant, a young man with kind eyes. Mr. Van, I'm James from Pemberton's. I need to speak with you, but not here. He pressed a business card into my hand. On the back, hastily scrawled, Your daughter's body never arrived. Call me. I pocketed the card with shaking hands that weren't entirely an act anymore. The confirmation hit like a physical blow, even though I'd suspected. Sarah wasn't dead. She was merchandise. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of performed grief and gathered intelligence. I let myself be led around like a lost puppy, all while memorizing faces, recording conversations, building my war chest of evidence. When Martha announced it was time for toasts to celebrate Sarah's memory, I knew my moment had come. Gerald raised his champagne. To Sarah, though her time was brief, she gave us the greatest gift, a new life to cherish and mold. To Sarah, the crowd echoed. I stood on shaking legs. I'd like to say something. The room fell silent. Martha's eyes narrowed. My daughter was everything to me. I began, voice deliberately weak. And now I'm nothing. Just an old man who failed to protect his little girl. I see now that her baby needs more than I can give. The Blackwoods. I paused, swaying slightly. They'll do better than I ever could. Relief flooded Martha's face. Gerald actually smiled. They thought they'd won completely. I'll sign whatever papers you need, I finished. Just let me say goodbye to the baby first. One last connection to my Sarah. Of course, Martha cooed, all false warmth now. You can visit tomorrow. Supervised naturally. We can't be too careful with a newborn. I nodded brokenly and shuffled toward the door. Behind me, I heard the chatter resume, self-congratulations on handling the old fool so well. Brad didn't even walk me out. In my car, I allowed myself one moment of pure rage, gripping the steering wheel, until my knuckles went white. Then, I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First to Marcus at the FBI. Then, to my old colleague, now a private investigator. Finally, to the funeral assistant. James, it's Van. Tell me everything you know. As I drove home through empty streets, James's words echoed in my mind. There's no body, sir. There never was. I've seen falsified death certificates before, but this is something else entirely. I thought of Sarah somewhere out there, possibly alive, but certainly in danger. I thought of my grandchild innocent and unaware of the evil surrounding them. I thought of Jennifer Walsh and Maria Santos' names on a list of the Blackwoods victims. Tomorrow they expected a broken old man to come crawling back. They'd get him. But while they were busy gloating over their victory, the real Van would be working in shadows they didn't even know existed. Every empire had a foundation, and I'd spent 30 years learning how to find the cracks. Sarah used to ask me why I loved puzzles so much. Because every piece matters, I'd told her. Even the ones that seem insignificant. You just have to know where they fit. The Blackwoods had given me plenty of pieces tonight. Now it was time to complete the picture. Dawn painted the sky the color of old blood as I sat across from James in a 24-hour diner on the wrong side of town. He was younger than I'd first thought, maybe 25, with nervous hands that kept rearranging the sugar packets. "I could lose everything for telling you this," he began, voice barely above a whisper. "My daughter could lose her life if you don't," I replied. That settled him. He pulled out a folder, sliding it across the cracked Formica table. "I've been documenting irregularities for months. Bodies that never arrived, death certificates for people who were supposed to be transferred, not cremated. Your daughter's case. It's not unique." Inside were photocopies of transport logs, all showing the same pattern. Bodies supposedly delivered to Pemberton's that never materialized. Death certificates signed by Dr. Rothsberg. And always connections to the Blackwood family. "Why haven't you gone to the police?" James laughed bitterly. "Gerald Blackwood owns half the city council. His golf buddy is the chief of police. Who would believe a funeral home assistant over them?" "You're not alone anymore," I said, memorizing every document. "Can you get me originals?" "Give me 2 days. Pemberton keeps them in a safe, but he's got a bourbon habit and a predictable schedule." I handed him a burner phone. "Use this. Trust no one else." My next meeting was with Tommy Chen, the private investigator who'd helped me nail the Stanton embezzlement case 5 years back. His office hadn't changed, still the same organized chaos that somehow made sense only to him. "Van, I'm sorry about Sarah," he started. "She's not dead, Tommy." His hands stilled over his keyboard. "Come again." I laid out everything. The insurance, the emails, the facility, James's information. Tommy listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. "Jesus Christ, Van. This is organ trafficking. International level stuff. Can you help?" "Already on it." His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Let's see what dirt we can find on our friends the Blackwoods." Within hours, Tommy had uncovered a web that made my initial findings look like scratches on the surface. Brad owed nearly $3 million to the Kozlov crime family, not the $2 million I'd found. The Russians had given him an ultimatum: pay up, or become fish food. Gerald had been covering the debts in exchange for something. "Here's where it gets interesting," Tommy said, pulling up financial records. 2 large deposits into Brad's account. One 6 months ago, one 3 months ago. Guess what dates those correspond to? Jennifer Walsh and Maria Santos. I breathed. Bingo. 50,000 each time. Blood money, literally. We spent the afternoon building profiles on the previous victims. Jennifer Walsh, 28, elementary school teacher. Married to David Walsh, a mechanic. 1 daughter. Supposedly died from complications during her 2nd pregnancy. Maria Santos, 32, nurse. Married to Carlos Santos, construction worker. Twin boys. Also died in childbirth at Grandview. Both women were organ donor matches for recipients in South America. Tommy discovered. Both had rare blood types. Both were young and healthy. "Just like Sarah," I said, my voice thick. "Van, there's more. The Riverside facility isn't just storing vegetables. They're keeping people in medically induced comas, harvesting organs, gradually keeping the victims alive as long as possible to maximize profit." My phone buzzed. Amy's text made my blood run cold. "Emergency surgery scheduled at Riverside tonight. Patient Jane Doe. They're taking a kidney." "We need to get there," I said. Tommy shook his head. "It's a fortress. Private security cameras everywhere. We need more than 2 old guys with good intentions." Then we get creative, I said. You still know that tech kid, the one who hacked the mayor's email? Ricky, yeah, but call him. And I need a favor from Marcus at the FBI. The FBI can't touch this without probable cause. I'm not asking them to. I just need Marcus to run some plates and maybe forget to log it. That evening, I met Amy at a park 3 miles from the hospital. She looked exhausted, stress etched in every line of her young face. I could get fired just being here, she said. You could save lives by being here, I countered. She handed me a flash drive. Security footage from the night Sarah was brought in. I had to call in 5 years of favors to get this. What's on it? You need to see for yourself. But Mr. Van, prepare yourself. Back in my home office, I steeled myself and opened the files. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. 2 nights ago. There was Sarah very much alive being wheeled down a corridor. She was conscious fighting, calling out. The audio was muffled, but I could read her lips. Dad, get my dad. Martha Blackwood walked alongside the gurney, syringe in hand. She said something to Sarah, who shook her head violently. Then, Martha grabbed Sarah's IV port and injected the contents. Within seconds, Sarah's movement slowed, then stopped. I had to pause the video, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't hold the mouse. My baby girl drugged and kidnapped while I sat in a waiting room 50 feet away. When I could breathe again, I continued watching. They wheeled her to a service elevator. The last frame showed her being loaded into an ambulance marked Riverside Long-Term Care. Alive. Definitely alive. Tommy called an hour later. Van, you sitting down, Ricky got into their system. Sarah's at Riverside, listed as Jane Doe, room 412. Admitted with severe brain damage from childbirth complications. But here's the kicker, her brain scans show normal activity. They're keeping her sedated. How long do we have? Transport manifest shows international medical shipment scheduled for Thursday. That's 3 days. 3 days to save my daughter. 3 days to unravel a conspiracy that had already claimed at least 2 lives. 3 days to stop the Blackwoods from adding Sarah to their body count. Tommy, I need everything. Building layouts, staff schedules, security protocols. And find me Jennifer Walsh's and Maria Santos's families. It's time they knew the truth. What are you planning? The Blackwoods think they're predators and everyone else is prey. They're about to learn that some prey have teeth. I spent the rest of the night planning my old skills, coming back like riding a bicycle. Every crime had patterns. Every criminal had weaknesses. The Blackwoods' weakness was their arrogance, their absolute certainty that money and power made them untouchable. By dawn, I had a plan. It was dangerous, probably illegal, and definitely crazy. But it might work. And if it meant saving Sarah, I'd walk through hell itself. I texted my assembled team, meeting tomorrow night. Bring everything. Time to hunt. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to Sarah's old room, sat on her bed and prayed. Not to any particular god, just to the universe, to whatever forces might be listening. Give me 3 days, I whispered. Just 3 days to save my little girl. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Storm coming. Good. The Blackwoods had sown the wind. Time for them to reap the whirlwind. The abandoned warehouse Tommy had secured sat in the industrial district, a ghost of better economic times. Our war council convened at midnight. Me, Tommy, Amy, James, Ricky the hacker, and 3 new additions that made my heart both soar and break. David Walsh looked like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. Carlos Santos carried himself with the controlled fury of a man who'd been denied justice too long. Beside them stood Rebecca Martinez, an investigative journalist who'd been circling the Blackwoods for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. Gentlemen, I began spreading out the evidence across makeshift tables. Thank you for coming. I know this is hard. Hard. David's voice cracked. They told me Jenny died from a hemorrhage. Closed casket. Quick cremation. I never got to say goodbye. If she's alive. She's not, Carlos said quietly. I hired my own investigator after Maria died. Found records of organ shipments to Brazil, dated a week after her supposed death. Heart, liver, kidneys. They parted her out like a car. The room fell silent. Amy broke it, her voice stronger than I'd heard before. We can't bring them back, but we can save Sarah and stop this from happening again. Rebecca pulled out her laptop. I've been building a case for 3 years. Every mysterious death at Grandview, every family hustled through grief into silence. The Blackwoods have killed at least 12 people. That we know of. Why didn't you publish? Tommy asked. No proof. They're too careful, too connected. Until now. She looked at me. Your evidence plus mine equals a story that'll burn their empire to ash. But we need Sarah alive to make it stick. Ricky, all of 22 with more computer skills than legal sense, had been busy. I've mapped Riverside's entire security system. Cameras, keycards, motion sensors. It's tight, but there are blind spots. Service entrance has a 40-second loop during shift change at 2 a.m. Guards, I asked. 6 on duty overnight. But Thursday's a skeleton crew. Monthly poker game that Gerald encourages to keep them happy and distracted. Inside help. Amy raised her hand. I've got 2 nurses at Riverside who've been suspicious for months. Dr. Patricia Chen from Jefferson Memorial wants in too. She's been haunted by losing patients to Grandview. What about law enforcement? David asked. Surely the FBI. Already in motion, I said. My contact needs probable cause for a warrant. We're going to give him gift-wrapped evidence that even Gerald's connections can't bury. We spent the next 4 hours choreographing our plan. Every detail scrutinized, every contingency examined. By dawn, we had our strategy. Dangerous, yes. Likely to work. Maybe. Our only shot. Absolutely. The next day, I played my role to perfection. Showed up at the Blackwood mansion, looking even more disheveled than before. Martha greeted me with false concern that made my skin crawl. Van darling, you look terrible. Have you been eating? I can't. I keep forgetting things. This morning I put my keys in the refrigerator. I let my hands shake as I pulled out the custody papers. Maybe you're right. Maybe the baby needs better than a confused old man. Her eyes lit up like a predator spotting wounded prey. You're making the right choice. Let me get Gerald. While she fetched her husband, I planted 3 listening devices Ricky had provided. Tiny things powered by movement, virtually undetectable. Under the coffee table, behind a picture frame inside a decorative vase, Gerald appeared with documents thicker than a phone book. Van. I'm glad you're being sensible about this. We've also prepared power of attorney papers just in case your condition worsens. Best to plan ahead. Condition. Well, grief can trigger dementia in men your age. If you need care, we want to ensure you're looked after properly. The same long-term care they'd provided Jennifer and Maria, no doubt. I signed where they indicated each signature, buying us more time and feeding their arrogance. Could I see the baby just once more? Martha's smile was all teeth. Of course. Brad's upstairs with little Gerald Jr. You named him Gerald. Family tradition. Sarah would understand. I bit my tongue hard enough to taste blood. Sarah had picked out names months ago. Emma for a girl, Michael for a boy, after my father. But I just nodded, the confused old man accepting another loss. The nursery looked like a luxury hotel suite. My grandson, my Sarah's baby, lay in a crib that cost more than most cars. Brad sat in a rocking chair, scrolling through his phone while the baby fussed. Hey, Van, he said without looking up. Come to say goodbye. I picked up my grandson, feeling his weight, smelling that sweet baby scent that brought tears to my eyes. This little boy would never know his mother if we failed. I held him close, whispering promises only he could hear. Your mama's coming back, little one. Grandpa's going to make sure of it. What's that? Brad finally looked up. Just saying goodbye, I replied, handing back the baby with shaking hands that weren't entirely an act. That evening, our devices bore fruit. Gerald's study became a confession booth as he conducted business unaware of our electronic ears. Brazilian buyers confirmed for Thursday, he told someone. Fresh product premium quality. The mother's organs should fetch 8 million minimum. What about the old man? The voice asked. Signing over custody tomorrow. Martha's already got commitment papers drawn up. Say he's a danger to himself, get him into Riverside. His organs might be old, but his rare blood type makes them valuable to the right buyer. I listened to them plot my murder with the same casual tone they'd use for dinner plans. But rage had burned through to cold purpose. They'd just given us probable cause. Rebecca worked through the night crafting a story that would destroy them. But we needed more than words. We needed Sarah. Tommy's surveillance confirmed she was still at Riverside, still alive. The surgery had been postponed due to a recipient issue buying us precious time. But Thursday's transport remained scheduled. We go tomorrow night, I announced to the team. Everyone clear on their roles. Nods all around. David and Carlos would handle external security. Rebecca would be ready to broadcast the moment we had proof. Amy and her nurses would help evacuate Sarah. Ricky would kill their communications and security systems. Tommy and I would penetrate the facility. What about the Blackwoods? James asked. They're having a charity gala Thursday night. 500 of the city's elite celebrating Gerald's philanthropy. I smiled coldly. They'll get a show they'll never forget. The FBI warrant was ready, waiting only for my signal. Local news had been alerted to expect the story of the century. Everything hinged on tomorrow night. I spent my last evening of preparation in Sarah's room again, going through photo albums. Her first day of school, her college graduation, her wedding to Brad back when I thought he'd protect her. How had I missed the monster behind his easy smile? My phone buzzed. A text from Amy. Sarah's stable. They're keeping her heavily sedated but alive. Heard them discussing harvest schedule. You've got maybe 36 hours. 36 hours. Thursday night seemed impossibly far away. Another text, this one from Marcus at the FBI. Team standing by. Get me that evidence van. Make it bulletproof. I would. The Blackwoods had built their empire on the graves of innocent women. Tomorrow night we'd show the world what lay beneath their charitable foundation. I looked at Sarah's picture from last Christmas. 9 months pregnant, glowing with joy and anticipation. Hold on, baby girl, I whispered. Daddy's coming. The storm that had been building for days finally broke, rain lashing against windows like tears from heaven. Perfect weather for what was to come. The Blackwoods thought they were safe in their fortress of money and influence. They were about to learn that no fortress was impregnable when the enemy was already inside the gates. And tomorrow night, their gates would fall. Thursday arrived wrapped in darkness and rain that hammered the city like judgment. At 6 p.m., while the Blackwood elite gathered at the Grandview Ballroom for Gerald's charity gala, our team took their positions. I sat in Tommy's van, watching feeds from Ricky's hijacked cameras. Sarah lay in room 412, machines breathing for her IV lines, feeding her the drugs that kept her imprisoned in her own body. Seeing her like that pale and still ignited a fury that burned away any last hesitation. Communications are looped, Ricky reported through our earpieces. You've got a 20-minute window before anyone notices. Medical team in position, Amy confirmed. Dr. Chen has an ambulance standing by. Security neutralized. David Walsh's voice carried quiet satisfaction. Poker games in full swing. They won't be bothering anyone. I looked at Tommy. Ready, partner. Let's go save your daughter. We moved through Riverside's sterile corridors like ghosts. Amy's inside nurses had disabled the internal alarms and provided staff uniforms. Just 2 more medical personnel in a facility full of secrets. Room 412's door stood before us, an ordinary barrier hiding extraordinary evil. I steadied my breathing, then pushed inside. Sarah. My baby girl, tubes down her throat, monitors tracking the life they'd stolen from her. But alive. Beautifully, impossibly alive. Dr. Chen worked with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, preparing for transport. She's stable, but we need to move fast. The drugs they've been using. There could be complications during withdrawal. I took Sarah's hand, feeling its warmth, the pulse that proved the Blackwoods had failed. "I'm here, sweetheart. Dad's here. You're going home." Amy and her team wheeled in transport equipment. As we prepared to move Sarah, my phone buzzed. Rebecca's text made me smile grimly. "In position at Gala. Ready for the show. Tommy, take over here. I've got one more performance to give." "Van, stick to the plan. Get Sarah out." The plan includes destroying them completely. They tried to steal my daughter and grandson. They succeed in killing others. This ends tonight. I left Riverside as sirens began wailing in the distance. Not for us, for them. The FBI's warrant had been activated the moment we confirmed Sarah's location. Federal agents were descending on multiple Blackwood properties simultaneously. But I had a more personal message to deliver. The Grandview Ballroom glittered with crystal and hypocrisy. 500 of the city's wealthiest, applauding a man who butchered women for profit. They sipped champagne worth more than most people's monthly salary while celebrating Gerald's humanitarian efforts. I entered through the service door, my appearance drawing stares. Still in the rumpled suit I'd worn to play the broken grandfather, I looked like exactly what they expected, a confused old man who'd wandered into the wrong place. Van Martha's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. "What are you doing here?" I made my way to the stage where Gerald stood at the podium, his speech about giving back to the community, interrupted by my arrival. Security moved to intercept me, but I raised my hand. "Please," I called out, letting my voice crack. "I just need to say something about my daughter. About Sarah." Gerald's jaw tightened, but with 500 witnesses, he couldn't have me dragged out without questions. He gestured magnanimously. "Of course, Van. Come up." I climbed the steps slowly, each one measured and careful. The crowd watched with a mixture of pity and discomfort. Perfect. At the microphone, I looked out at the sea of faces. Then I straightened my shoulders and let the mask fall away. "Ladies and gentlemen, Gerald Blackwood killed my daughter, or so he wanted you to believe." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gerald stepped forward. "The poor man's grief-stricken." Grief-stricken, yes. Confused, no. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the ballroom's AV system. Ricky's hack, working perfectly. "Let me share something with you all." The screens around the room lit up with security footage. Sarah being drugged, Martha wielding the syringe, Gerald discussing organ prices. The crowd's shock turned to horror as image after image exposed the truth. Jennifer Walsh, Maria Santos, my Sarah, and 9 other women we've identified so far. Murdered for their organs, kept alive in medically induced comas while being harvested piece by piece. "Security," Gerald roared, but his men were already in federal custody. "They're not coming," I said calmly. "Right now, FBI agents are raiding your hospital, your facilities, your homes. They're finding the evidence you thought you'd hidden so well. Financial records showing millions in illegal organ sales. Medical files on women you declared dead while keeping them alive. Transport logs to underground medical facilities across 3 continents. Martha lunged at me, screaming about lies and lawsuits. The crowd recoiled as she showed her true face. The mask of refinement shattered. 2 federal agents appeared, as if summoned, restraining her. But here's the best part. I continued, as Brad tried to slink toward the exits. Sarah's alive. We got her out 20 minutes ago. She's going to testify to everything she heard while you thought she was unconscious. Every plan, every confession, every disgusting detail. Brad froze as agents blocked his path. The son-in-law who'd sold his wife for gambling debts finally looked like what he was, a coward trapped by his own greed. Gerald, still at the podium, tried one last play. "This is preposterous. I'll sue you for everything. You're a demented old fool who can't accept his daughter's death." "Am I?" I smiled, the expression sharp as winter wind. "Then explain this." The screens changed to live footage. Rebecca Martinez stood outside Riverside FBI agents, carrying out evidence boxes behind her. Her voice filled the ballroom through the speakers. This is Rebecca Martinez reporting live from Riverside Long-Term Care, where federal agents have just discovered a massive organ trafficking ring, allegedly run by billionaire Gerald Blackwood and his family. At least 12 women declared dead from childbirth complications were actually being kept alive in this facility for organ harvesting. The ballroom erupted. Guests stampeded for exits. Phones came out as everyone tried to distance themselves from the Blackwoods. Gerald's empire built on blood, and lies crumbled in real time. I leaned into the microphone one last time. "You called me a doddering old fool, Gerald. Told your associates I was too weak to fight back. You forgot something important. I spent 30 years hunting men like you. Rich men who thought money made them untouchable. You're just another criminal in an expensive suit." Federal agents mounted the stage. Gerald Blackwood, pillar of society, philanthropist extraordinaire, was handcuffed in front of everyone who'd ever bowed to his wealth. "You destroyed my family," he snarled at me. "No," I replied quietly. "You destroyed 12 families. I just returned the favor." As they led him away, I heard him asking for his lawyer. His lawyer, as Ricky had discovered, was already in custody for conspiracy. The entire network was falling. Brad broke down completely sobbing about debts and threats, trying to paint himself as a victim. The agents weren't sympathetic. He'd traded his wife's life for money. No amount of tears would wash that clean. I left the ballroom as more agents arrived. Outside, rain had gentled to a soft patter. Tommy waited in the van. "How'd it go?" he asked. "They're done, all of them." "Good. Sarah's at Jefferson Memorial, stable and starting to wake up. She's asking for you." I'd never moved faster in my life. The morning sun painted Sarah's hospital room in shades of gold and hope. 3 weeks had passed since that night at Riverside, 3 weeks of healing testimony and rebuilding. Sarah sat propped against pillows, little Michael sleeping peacefully in her arms. My grandson, named properly, now safe from those who would have stolen his mother and corrupted his future. "Dad." Sarah's voice still carried a rasp from the breathing tube, but it was the most beautiful sound in my world. The prosecutors called. Gerald tried to make a deal. "Let me guess, he'll give up his international contacts if they reduce his sentence." 25 to life, instead of life without parole. She shook her head. As if 25 years could balance 12 murders. The trials had been swift, the evidence overwhelming. Gerald and Martha Blackwood faced federal charges for murder, organ trafficking, kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy, each charge carrying decades. Brad had pled guilty to avoid trial, receiving 40 years, with possibility of parole in 20. He'd wept at sentencing, but I felt no pity. He'd chosen money over love, greed over family. "Amy stopped by yesterday," Sarah continued. "The FBI commended her for her bravery. Jefferson Memorial offered her a position as head of their new patient advocacy program. She earned it. Without her, we might never have known." Sarah's hand found mine. Don't think about what might have been. Think about what is. I'm here. Michael's here. We survived." She was right, of course. The investigation had revealed the full scope of the Blackwoods' evil. 12 women confirmed dead, their organs sold to the highest bidders. 3 more found alive at various facilities, including Jennifer Walsh. She'd been kept comatose for 6 months, but she was recovering, reunited with her daughter. Small miracles in an ocean of tragedy. Maria Santos hadn't been as fortunate. By the time we'd unraveled the network, she'd been gone too long, too much taken. But Carlos found solace in justice, in knowing her killers would never harm another family. He'd started a foundation in Maria's name, supporting families affected by medical crime. The journalist, Rebecca, she won a Pulitzer, Sarah said. Her series on medical corruption saved lives across the country. 17 similar operations shut down, all connected to the Blackwood network. I remembered Rebecca's fierce determination, her years of patient investigation finally bearing fruit. She'd sent me a copy of her book, dedicated to the fathers who never stop fighting for their daughters. "Mr. Van," Dr. Chen knocked softly before entering. Sorry to interrupt. I wanted to check on our miracle patient. She examined Sarah with the careful attention that had made her suspicious in the first place. Those instincts had saved my daughter's life. Everything looks perfect. You'll be ready for discharge tomorrow. Home, Sarah whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. I never thought I'd see home again. After Dr. Chen left, we sat in comfortable silence, watching Michael sleep. Such a tiny thing to have been at the center of so much evil. The Blackwoods had seen him as leverage, a tool for their schemes. Now, he was just a baby, loved and protected with his whole life ahead of him. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. Sarah's voice dropped. When I was there, I could hear things. Not always the drugs made everything fuzzy, but sometimes. They talked about their other victims, laughed about families too poor or powerless to fight back. They can't hurt anyone now. I know, but Dad, they weren't the only ones. The network went deep. International buyers, other hospitals, doctors who looked the other way. The FBI says it could take years to unravel completely. I squeezed her hand gently. Then they'll take years, but they'll do it. Your testimony started an avalanche, sweetheart. The whole system is under scrutiny now. A knock interrupted us. Tommy entered with David Walsh and his daughter Emma. Behind them, Carlos Santos carried his twin boys. We'd become an unlikely family, bonded by loss and triumph. Hope we're not intruding, David said. The kids wanted to see baby Michael. Sarah smiled, the expression lighting her whole face. Never an intrusion. Come in, come in. The room filled with quiet chatter and children's laughter. Life defeating death. Hope conquering despair. Emma Walsh, 6 years old, approached Sarah shyly. My mommy's coming home next week, she whispered. Daddy says you helped save her. We all did, Sarah replied, touching Emma's cheek gently. We all saved each other. As the afternoon wore on, more visitors arrived. James from the funeral home, free from Pemberton's corrupt influence, and starting his own ethical practice. Ricky, wearing a suit, for once recruited by the FBI's cybercrime division. Even some of the Grandview nurses who'd been horrified to learn what happened in their hospital now advocates for patient rights and transparency. When evening came and the room emptied, Sarah and I were left with just Michael and our thoughts. The baby stirred, making those little sounds that new parents learn to interpret. Sarah adjusted him with practiced ease, already a natural mother despite missing his first weeks. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. How did you know when they told you I was dead? How did you know to doubt? I considered the question carefully. You called me every Tuesday at 7:30. Never missed not once in 5 years. Even from your honeymoon. The Tuesday before Michael was born, you called right on time. Told me you were scared but excited. Said you loved me. I remember. A daughter who never misses a call doesn't die without her father beside her. Not if there's any way to prevent it. You would have fought to see me, and that meant someone stopped you. Once I knew that everything else was just following the trail. Sarah's tears came freely now, but they were healing tears. I did fight. Even through the drugs, I kept thinking if I could just hold on, you'd find me. You always found the truth in your cases. I knew you'd find me. Always, I promised. No matter how deep they bury the lies, I'll always find the truth. And I'll always find you. Michael chose that moment to wake fully, his cries demanding attention. Sarah laughed through her tears, the sound mixing with her son's voice in a symphony of survival. As she fed him, I thought about the long road ahead. Therapy for Sarah, trials for the remaining conspirators rebuilding a life the Blackwoods had tried to steal. But we'd do it together. All of us, the strange family forged in crisis. The Blackwoods had thought wealth and power made them apex predators. They'd forgotten that humans survived not through individual strength, but through community, through refusing to abandon each other, even when hope seemed lost. Hey, Dad, Sarah's voice pulled me back. Thank you for not giving up, for playing their game until you could win it. for being the father who came back for me. No thanks needed, sweetheart. That's what fathers do. We protect our children no matter how old they get, no matter who stands in our way. As night settled over the hospital, I held my daughter's hand and watched my grandson sleep. Somewhere, the Blackwoods sat in federal cells, their empire ashes, their futures measured in decades behind bars. They'd learned too late that some things money couldn't buy, and power couldn't crush. Things like a father's love, a community's courage, the truth patient and persistent, waiting to be uncovered. Sarah was right. We'd survived. More than that, we'd won. And in winning, we'd saved others from the same fate. Jennifer Walsh would hold her daughter again. Future families would be spared our pain. The hunters had become the hunted, and justice long delayed had finally been served. But most importantly, I had my daughter back. She had her son. And tomorrow, we'd go home together to heal, to grow, to live the life others had tried to steal. The Blackwoods had bet everything on me being a weak old man, too grief-stricken to fight back. They'd forgotten that grief could forge the strongest steel, that love could move mountains, and that sometimes the quietest voice in the room belonged to the most dangerous person there. I kissed Sarah's forehead, then Michael's, and settled back in my chair. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More testimonies, continued healing. But tonight, we were together. We were alive. We were free. And that was enough. That was everything. Sleep well, sweetheart, I whispered. Dad's here. Dad will always be here. Sarah smiled, already drifting off her arms, secure around her son. And for the first time in weeks, I too found peace. The war was won. My family was safe. The old wolf could finally rest. If you've stayed with me through this journey, thank you. Stories like Sarah's are rare, but they remind us of something important. Evil flourishes when good people look the other way. But it crumbles when we stand together, when we refuse to accept easy lies, when we fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Have you ever had a moment where your instincts told you something was wrong, even when everyone said otherwise? A time when you had to choose between accepting a comfortable lie or pursuing an uncomfortable truth? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it with others who might need to hear that justice is possible, that family bonds can overcome any evil, and that sometimes playing weak is the strongest strategy of all. Like this video if you believe in the power of truth over money, love over greed, and justice over power. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances and winning against all odds. Thank you for letting me share Sarah's story with you. May you never need such courage, but if you do, may you find it within yourself to be the wolf that protects the pack. Until next time, remember, the truth may be buried, but it's always there, waiting for someone brave enough to dig it up. Be that person. Your family, your community, your conscience will thank you. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and above all, trust your instincts. They might just save a life.